Abundance is not something we acquire. It is something we tune into. Wayne Dyer. Welcome back, podcast listeners. This is your host, Rayanne Irving. Oh, I have someone special today that's coming on the show for you. If you aren't already following, reading, or listening to Susie Carder, I promise you're about to find out precisely what you've been missing. A real gladiator, a legacy ambassador, and your sister and prophet, Susie is grounded in abundance. Now, you have to be willing to invest if you want significant returns, not just in business, but in yourself. And Susie knows this because she hasn't just done the work to get to where she's at today. Susie does the work every single day, which is why she's one of the world's top profit coaches, business strategists, and best-selling authors. Did I mention inspirational speaker? Because she is, and that's actually how I first came into contact with Susie. When she spoke, it was with intention and authenticity, which really appealed to me because I myself was just beginning to explore my own relationship with money and self-worth. Now, Susie, your enthusiasm, your honesty, your integrity, those are all the landmark qualities that encouraged me to reach out and ask you to join us here. And you did. I still can't believe it. I can't believe that you're here. Thank you so much for joining us. Please take this mic away from me before I embarrass myself any further and tell us everything you can about Susie Carder.
I would love to, Ram. So I think first, for people that don't know me, right, let me give you a little context.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an international best-selling author. I'm writing my 10th book, or it's being published in September by Simon & Schuster, called Power Your Profit.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Very excited.
Yeah.
My passion and my purpose in life is to help entrepreneurs reach the 1% club. And the 1% club is having your business reach $1 million. There's only 1% of entrepreneurs out of the 30 million entrepreneurs in our country today that hit the 1% club. And to me, that's unacceptable.
I did not know that.
Yes. And it's because we just don't know how, right? It's not something that you learn in school. It's not something we learn in our family. It's a conversation that either you're brought up in a culture that talks about money, which most entrepreneurs are not, right? Entrepreneurs are generally rebels with a cause, right? We want to make a difference. We want to, a lot of entrepreneurs, didn't go to business school. I'm lucky enough to have my PhD, which is my public high school diploma. And so my schooling has been schooling like this, right? As a young mom, owning a business, I was a hairdresser. So I had my own little business and I had to figure out how to make money. And I was a single mom raising 2 kids and I had to figure out how to make money fast, right? I had no alimony, no child support. I left an abusive relationship. I had to get out, girl. My babies were 6 months old and 18 months old. And if anybody has children, shit is bad when you're leaving when they're that little. Right? It's like, get me out. But I repeated my past, right? I repeated my past and my mother. My mother was always with abusive men. My dad was verbally abusive and would withhold his emotions. Like, he just didn't talk to you. Like, that was his punishment, which was almost just hit me or yell at me or something, right? So we grew up in 9 kids, right? Bobby, Ronnie, Stevie, Terry, Joni, Shelley, Susie, Kelly, Debbie. Lots of kids, small house. We had 1,200 square feet. We had 1 bathroom, 6 girls, and everything was a hand-me-down. Everything. Everything. Lots of tension in the household, lots of fighting in the household with that many kids, and really no structure. So for me, love meant yelling and screaming, right? Or hitting or neglect, so I repeated the past. Right. I married a man who was charming and beautiful on the outside, and behind closed doors, it was not pretty. And, I found myself on the floor with my husband on top of me, realizing I am my mother. And I just started crying, not because he was hitting me, because I'm a feisty girl. I thought I could beat that 200-pound man up, right? And I think I was a $120 at the time. But when you're feisty, you just think, I got you. I'm gonna whoop your ass. And so laying on the floor, I was like, I got to get out. Like, I don't want my children to be this. I didn't know how to be anything else. I didn't but I knew I didn't want this.
Mm-hmm.
And, the divorce was horrible, ugly. And so I walked away with nothing. Right. And I remember the day I left, he said, look in the mirror, because your life will never be better than it is right now. You are leaving the best thing in your life. And that, Rand, give a girl a challenge. Yeah, watch me.
Right.
Like that song, watch me, watch me. Watch me, nay, nay.
Well, I love it. I love it that just that fire in you is just like, oh, really? Like, yeah, we'll see who gets the last laugh here, because I love a good laugh. Like, I love those challenges. I love it.
Never went away, and that's
for
sure.
Mm.
So having to raise 2 children and not understanding, one business. I didn't know anything about business. And so back then, I'm a little more seasoned than some people, right?
Yeah.
You went to the bookstores, right? Magazines that we didn't have. There was no online training. You would go to physical trainings if you knew about them.
Right.
Right. There was no email, right? This was, it was like, who do you know? That was referral marketing at its finest.
Yep.
If you were on somebody's direct mail list, you got something, but we didn't have that kind of technology. So literally I would be in the bookstore. I would bring my kids and they'd go to the kids section. I'd bring all my books to the kids section. And today they're still readers, and, I'm just trying to figure out, how do I make money? How do I make this happen? How do I do this? And how do I build my business and my clientele?
Mm-hmm.
And, built a $250,000 business as a solo hairdresser, and went, wow, they didn't teach us this in school. School is about your licensing. 15% of your financial success is your technical ability. The other 85% is all the other things: communication, marketing, sales, your mindset, financial management. And so I became a master at the 85%. And even now in my businesses, right, I focus on the 85% with clients. If you're a speaker, if you're whatever your vocation is, you got to be good at that. I'm not working with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to work with you on what's the quickest way to your financial prosperity. And one of the most proudest things that, I've done when I worked with Lisa, we've worked together for almost 20 years, is really teaching her how to build her personal wealth. It's not enough that you make millions. It's how much are you building for yourself and your family.
Right.
So you can eventually retire. You can eventually, or you can give your children a lifestyle that you never had.
Mm-hmm.
Like both of my daughters, have higher education. My oldest daughter went to Harvard and Wharton, and I paid for that.
Wow.
Right? As a kid, that, literally when I left, I went to the WIC, right? The welfare office, and I didn't qualify. I'm like, how do I not qualify? I have no child support, right? This doesn't make any sense to me. And so I'm like, okay, then I really have to figure this out, which that was probably the biggest blessing, because there was no crutch. There was no, support system. My family definitely wasn't going to support me, because they were mad at me because I married an African-American man. And then that just made them right. I told you. Okay. Right. But I just need some help. Right? So that tenacity that got me out of the relationship was a tenacity that helped me build my business, helped me build my wealth. And 90% of your thinking is all subconscious, right? So we unconsciously are sabotaging ourselves from our old belief systems, from our parents and our grandparents and our community, and, the people that you're hanging out with, and the culture you're putting yourself inside of. 95% of what you're doing is unconscious. So let's wake up, right? I think that's what's happening in our whole country today. We're waking people up, and people have been in a slumber for a long time. And mindset is 80% of your success, right? I don't have a formal degree, right? I have my high school diploma, but I do have a wealth of information and a wealth of education. right? Benjamin Franklin says, take the coins from your purse, invest them in your mind, and your mind will fill your purse overflowing. And I'm a student of that, is what do I need to learn? What do I need to learn? And what do I need to implement? What do I need to learn? What do I need to implement? And it started out as survival, right? Survival for myself and my children, to pay for our rent, to pay for our food, to pay for their shoes and their school. And then it became a discipline of putting goal boards together, putting vision boards together, really working my goals and knowing specifically how much money. See, we all say, Rianne, I want to make more money. Okay, well, how much more? I can give you $1 and you have $1 more, that's more money. Like, what specifically do you want to do? Right? And there's a process that you have to learn to dream again. Right? I always say it's about turning your wanters on, because I think, especially if you come from any abuse, if you come from any kind of background that has suppressed you as a person, which is most of us, most of us did not grow up in an environment where we're like all rainbows and butterflies.
Right.
Right? We have challenges in life, right? We've had relationships that have failed. We have marriages that have failed. We bankruptcy, whatever your situations are. We all have them. Well, those also build our character and our bounce back muscle and being able to really reinvent yourself. But a lot of us shove all that down and then we just get more and more suppressed. And then your suppression is what you're living inside of versus your possibility. And so I want to teach people, like, how do you stay inside a possibility, even when we're inside of a breakdown, right? We are in a breakdown right now in our country, but how do you stay in possibility? Like, I want to be hope, love, inspiration for all people with radical action, right? You can't just think about it. So Lisa Nichols, was in The Secret. And so people would call her office, Rianne, and go, Lisa said, I need to meditate and, put my goals and the money will come. And I go to the mailbox and there's no money. I'm like, girl, you got to take action. You can't just, you got to do something. Like, how is money going to come if you're not putting anything out in the universe besides just thinking about it? Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying miracles don't happen, because miracles do happen. But there's also, miracles happen when you're putting faith and action in alignment and going in the right direction.
I love it. Yes.
You've got to be in radical action. So it's really looking at, one, what's your money story? We all grow up with a money story. And a money story, like if you think about your upbringing, what were some of the conversations that your family had around money?
Well, my dad was a drug addict and he made money, don't get me wrong, but I mean, he spent it. The day he got it, it was gone. He had champagne taste. And with my mom's one of the hardest working women I've ever known, but she spent it and gives it away all the time. Like, she doesn't keep anything for herself. And everything on my mom's side of the family, I've thought a lot about this, obviously. Everybody on my mom's side of the family is all about, like, make sure everything looks copacetic and looks magnificent on the outside, even though we're crumbling on the inside. Let's not let anybody know that. And then on my dad's side, it was, we don't talk about anything. My dad was disinherited, and he, the way that my father died, I mean, I think it just goes to show what he thought about himself and his money. So both sides of my family, it was, different actions, same level of self-worth and self-value, I believe, which is thinking that they're not deserving of and not worth the abundance. And they're not worthy of, good things.
Right. Mm-hmm. So most of our money beliefs are inherited unconsciously, right? Again, because if you look at 80% of our thoughts are subconscious, or 90%, are subconscious, right? So we're walking around with those old beliefs from our parents, from our grandparents, from our heritage, whatever culture you're raised inside of. I've been doing this work so long, it's just fascinating to me, right? What our culture says about money, right? So you want to look at, and you have to be aware of what is that unconscious conversation and bring it to awareness. I became really aware that mine was, you don't have any. That was a big one. And so in my family, it was, don't ask us because you don't get any. But what my dad did teach me about money, he said, Sue, you can have whatever you want. Just go get a job. And so I knew, for me at a young age, freedom was, this is now I'm just going to be real and raw. I'm just going to tell you the inside story. So we grew up with 6 girls, right? 9 kids, 6 girls. And when I said everything was a hand-me-down, ran everything. Like we would hand me down underwear, and there's 2 under me. So there's a lot of women before me. And I'm like, I do not, this is disgusting. So I worked, and the first little paycheck I got, I went to the little drugstore and I bought 10 pair of underwear. And they were cute and they had flowers and they were pretty. And I hid them from my other sisters.
Because they were
underwear were a commodity, right? This was like the goose that laid the golden egg. I'd come in with my underwear and hide them because I just wanted these underwear weren't somebody else's. That's disgusting. So I still have this weird underwear fetish. And I'm like, stop. You do not need any more underwear. You do not need any more Victoria's Secret. You do not need any more La Perla. You do not need, no, you don't need but I just can't help myself.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. You worked hard for that.
Right. But it's funny, I had to get in touch with what is why. So, I grew up that the belief I've been working on that really the last 10 years is I have to work hard, right? Because that was my dad's philosophy. You got to work hard for the money.
Right.
I'm like, wait, why can't I generate this prosperity without killing myself? Because that's not quality of life. If you're just working so hard and then at the end of the day, you're like, I gotta lay down, right? Or I have no more words. That's my saying. I have no more words. I've used them all today. So you look at what is your conversation and what were the conversations around you so that you can start identifying and then choosing, what do I want my beliefs to be around money, right? So we were a cash family, right? We had no debt, right? We had no credit. I just knew that my dad we never used a credit card, never saw that. Like when we ran out of groceries, that was it. You just had to wait for the next week or whenever that payday was. With 9 kids, you run out of groceries a lot. Like we had powdered milk and powdered eggs, like nasty stuff. People are like, why are you not a foodie? Because I grew up with nasty food. I just learned food wasn't a priority to me. It was like, oh, water, give me some water. I can fill my stomach up with some water, right? So, like when I see people who grew up in home that food meant love and food meant, family and community. And I've had to retrain myself when I host parties because food wasn't the center of attention, but it is for people. That means celebration and, just having to relearn, oh, what does that mean for other people in my community and my family? And so it's interesting to look at, what's your experience been around money to date, right? For yourself, because you can't change it. I can't blame my parents. I can't blame my husband. I can only take responsibility for me and go, okay, what do I want it to be, right? A great way to look at this is if money were your boyfriend and girlfriend, what kind of relationship would you have? That's just juicy.
That is juicy. I'm throwing up a whole mental image right now. I'll tell you what, he looks a lot like Chris Evans.
I like that relationship with money. He's hot, he's steamy. There's an abundance of it.
Right?
That's awesome. Right. And so you have a really healthy outlook right now, right? To what that would look like. Right. And then creating what are your top 3 core beliefs around money right now? The French have a saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So changing, I can't just put money in savings. And, I've been working with a girlfriend of mine. And when I first met her, she's like, I need to get this money thing under control. I'm like, awesome. Well, here's what we do. And I gave her the system of money, right? Let's pay off your debt. We did the snowball effect, where you chunk down, you pay your minimum on all your credit cards, and then you pay all the excess on one, and then start systematically paying it down. Paid off her debt, probably paid off roughly $30,000 in a year.
Wow.
She had a side hustle to pay off her debt. That was the main focus. Got money in her savings, and then she's just started sabotaging. So every time, she gets money in savings, then she runs up debt, then she's got to pull money from savings to pay off her debt. It's this vicious cycle.
Right.
Right. To go, because the goal was, let me get out of debt. The goal now is in accumulating wealth. Right. So it's that survival mode around money. Right. And money is a creative energy manifested into things. So when I realized that, I'm very creative, right? Look, when I had math in school, now I was a B student. So I wasn't an amazing student. If I applied myself, school just wasn't fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand why, I needed to learn history that it wasn't relevant to me today. Right? I love to learn. I love education. And, I failed my algebra class. So, and I'm like, well, I don't understand this. Why are you putting the alphabet in math? That makes no sense. Like, where am I going to use the alphabet in a math equation? So my relationship had to be completely transformed. And so when I realized that money was creative and we can create it, then, and I saw like my services, back in the day, I started out as a hairdresser. Back in the day, realizing that the haircut was money seems such a slight distinction, but I valued the result that I gave my clients
Right.
versus a lot of times as service providers, as coaches, as consultants, as whatever, we're putting a number on our head. Like you're paying Susie this number. You're not paying Susie. You're paying for the results Susie helps you create. So I create millionaires and multimillionaires. So you're paying for me. You're paying for me to help you create that, not the system, not the widget and gadget you're going to get, not the, does that make sense?
No, that really makes sense. I just want to touch down on that for our listeners. Um, because especially for those who have been who've been sex workers or sex trafficked,
Yeah.
that I loved what you said there, that you're not paying money for Susie. You're paying money. Sorry, can you repeat that? For the
The
service.
result. Yeah. For the result I'm helping you create.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So even being sex trafficked, right? You were being paid for someone's pleasure.
Yeah.
Right. They used your body, they used you. And so that's hard to get out of, right? As a service provider myself, it was hard to get out of. I didn't value me. And if you've been abused, if you've been a sex trafficker, there's little value on who you are.
Exactly.
So I have to work on your mindset and get your mindset right and valuing you as a person and the attributes you help people create besides sex, right? Because then we use sex as manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just easy. Like I can get whatever I want. I know how to do it. Like women and men know how, right? Because I was taught in an early age, my dad said to me, he said, Sue, you can have whatever no, that was the money conversation. He said, Sue, listen, men only want one thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you just need to know that. Now, as a child, 15, 16, Ryan, I went, they only want one thing. I'm going to get really good at this one thing.
I love
right?
it.
If you said they only care about you cooking or, if you could be like this analytic, I probably would have been an amazing student. But if you said they only want one thing, and we all knew what that implied. I'm like, I'm going to get so good at this one thing. Now, I am really good at this one thing, but I've had to reconstruct my thinking.
Right.
That one little sentence before you went on a date or before you went out with friends or before you did anything.
Yeah.
Backed me up for years, right? I used sex to manipulate because that was the only value I had.
Exactly.
That was the value my dad put on us as girls.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't say that to the boys, right? That was a whole nother conversation. Sorry, I cut you off. I just get really excited.
No, I love where this conversation is going because you're being real. I mean, these are the real conversations that lots of people aren't having. And I love that. I love that we're going here. And I think too, when we've attached that, when we learn to manipulate for it, the other thing though that comes with it is because of our lack of self-value in other areas. I can't speak for anybody else, but then the way that we spend our money, there's almost a shame to it. It can be where we're spending it, or at least I spent it, and I watched people in my family spend it with no regard for it. Like because there was no value on us, there was no value on what we spent it on. And so the money disappeared and it was just this constant struggle and cycle. What was that like for you?
Well, I think we're looking for things to validate our self-worth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, if I buy this car, oh, if I buy this purse, oh, if I buy these shoes. Oh, why do you think the whole counterfeit fashion world is so big? It's because we're trying to validate ourselves with this thing called a purse or shoes or, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So there's I'm gonna feel better if I buy this thing, but you don't really see that you don't feel better until you've spent all the money and you don't feel better. Right. Which, I had everything I could even imagine. I've worked hard, I've made millions. I've lost millions, right, as well. But in the peak of all of that, there was still that worthiness. That's still, you can't buy your way into self-worth.
That's right.
You have to pray your way. You have to heal your way. You've got to do therapy. You got to face your demons. And why am I so willing to talk about it? Because I face my demons. I'm willing to talk about the sexual abuse. I'm willing to talk about my abuse with my marriage. I'm willing about talk about I repeated the patterns. The blessing is I knew how I wanted to raise my children, and how I was raised was not how I was raising my children.
Oh,
So my children, I'm a protective mother hen, right? I will fight you. You go after my babies or those grandbabies, I will fight you. I will cut you, girl. Right? And I'm sure you feel the same way. And they go, grow up in a loving environment. But because I didn't, I said, here's what I want to give to my children and not spoil them. I took the good things parents did give me, because they gave me good things. They gave me a strong work ethic, right? They taught me how to, be responsible and not lie. And, so there were good things that I got from my family, right? I don't have to agree. And I think someone needs to hear this is I don't condone my parents' behavior. I don't condone my mother's behavior. I don't agree with it, but I still love them and I forgive them. Inside of whatever they were going through, they did try to do their best. And I know that sounds kind of willy-nilly, but if I look at my parents raised 9 kids, we're all amazing. We all do well in the world, right? So inside of the dysfunction, there's beauty. And I think we have to learn to see what's the gift that came wrapped in sandpaper by you being exploited.
Oh,
What's the gift that came wrapped in sandpaper because you were abused?
mm-hmm.
What's the gift that you can learn to share with other people? I believe my gift from God is my life. My gift back to God is what I do with my life. Now, whether you believe in God or not, you believe in a higher power. What's your gift to the world? What's your responsibility? Like, you're doing it, Rian. You went through this horrific thing. You could shove it in the closet. You could pretend it didn't exist. You could keep trying to pretend to live this perfect life, but there is no perfect life. Your past will continually sit in your future until you complete with your past. So you gotta face the ugly to get to the beauty, and the true beauty, the beauty of acceptance, the beauty of forgiveness, the beauty of love, the beauty of freedom to not look over your shoulder. Right?
I love that, not looking over your shoulder. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I came to this table kicking and screaming, like, I have to tell you that everything I was building an incredible business for myself. My papa had always said that you'll never get rich training horses, and my last year I brought in more money than I had ever seen, and on my own, like just without anybody, just riding horses. And when my partner died, I destroyed it. I sabotaged everything. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to get back on that horse. And I still hadn't learned my lesson. And so the universe, God, higher divine energy, kept throwing obstacles in my way, rerouting me. Like, it was unbelievable. And it took me until it's been the last 6 years where I've been discovering all the incredible gifts that were in every devastation, every heartbreak, every, relationship turned tragic. There was so much beauty and so much grace in all of it, and learning how to handle disappointments, learning how to reroute myself, how to self-regulate emotions, and then being able to turn it around and give back. I mean, I think that's where the grace and the beauty and the gift is for me, is taking everything that I've learned and being able to share it with people in today's day and age that are younger and that are going to be able to get on top of this, more readily, perhaps because hopefully they're falling into more mentors, because like you, I didn't have those mentors growing up. They weren't as readily accessible, and I wasn't taught to look for them. So yeah, I think that there's so much gift and so much beauty in just every experience that comes our way. I'm sorry, I just kind of went off on a tangent there. I just get really wrapped up in my excitement for all of the cool things that are happening right now. So
Well, it's a good tangent to get wrapped up in. Right? And somebody needs to hear that because they're in it, right? I think very much like, racism, sex trafficking, we're still in denial over as a country, right?
oh,
That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen, in our communities. No, it's happening right next door. It doesn't have to happen somewhere globally. It's right next to you.
it is right next to people. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had in just the last few months on incest alone. It is rampant, it is everywhere. And I think that I want to use the word duty, but I feel more comfortable using the word responsibility. I think it's our responsibility as those of us who've experienced it to have an open, honest conversation like you and I are having right here. And, I think that everything always comes back to unlearning behavioral patterns, to being open to understanding our own transgressions and our own experiences and just the patterns in the past that we were following. Finding forgiveness has probably been one of the tougher uh, conversations that I've had to have with myself. I don't know about you, but self-forgiveness, I always thought, yeah, it's bullshit. But when I really get down to it and I think about it, that self-forgiveness lends to that self-value, and that self-value, is where we bring that abundance into our life. And I think that when we allow ourselves to be more and to reach our full potentials and to embrace just not the imperfections but the perfection that comes from our just our life experiences, that grace that we're able to then spread out and lift others up with us. I don't know, I think that there's something so incredible about that.
That is delicious, right? And then when you look at, there's still so much, for about every 100,000 people, 11 people are being sex trafficked, right?
Mhm.
You're like, how is that numbering still so high? Right. And that's what's reported. That's
That's not
not
even
what's
what's really
reported.
going
That's,
on.
the sexual assault that you're talking about, incest, or, somebody knows that. And we're trained to normalize it. I was trained to normalize, sexual assault at a young age. Like that,
Mhm.
oh, that's just John. Oh, that's just, we don't want to talk about it. How do you not talk about that with your children? Right? What? Okay, we don't talk about it.
Oh, I love that you brought that up. Yeah.
It's we as parents, we as aunts, we as uncles, we as mothers, we as sisters have to be on the lookout, because we're not trained to share our feelings. We're not trained to talk about this, right? So that we can protect our children, and not just your children, like children, period.
Mhm.
You see something, say something. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but we are the keepers of our children. We are the keepers. And I'm an advocate because I didn't want it to happen to my children. I didn't want it to happen to anyone, you know, because it's horrific. It's horrific. It's a hard journey to have to go through. And your self-love, as you said, Rhiannon, is probably the biggest blessing that you can give yourself. And
Well,
it
I
takes
think
it takes a lot of work. Roll up your sleeves and
mm,
find a good coach, find a good advocate that's been there, not theory. If you look at your great coach to walk somebody through this, I don't know if that's what you do or part of what you do, but find someone that's been through it, because theory is not practical. Like there's a lot of people that teach what I teach, business, strategy, systems, and then I start asking them about their business and they're like, well, I only do $200,000 a year. How are you going to teach building a multi-million-dollar business if you've never done it?
right.
You can't, you've never been through it. So you can't advise people. Work with people that are just starting. That's great, whatever your numbers are. But you can't, if they have not walked in your shoes, it's harder to relate. Yes, some theory works, but there's enough people out there that are doing this work that also have education, that have done a ton of work on themselves, like you and I, to go, let me help you walk this journey, because it is a journey. It is forever part of the makeup of who Susie Carter is, right? And it still dictates a lot of things that happen in my life. But in my relationship now, like it's hard for me to trust. It's hard for me to be vulnerable. right? I still find myself manipulating. I'm like, stop.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm afraid he's going to leave. He's not going to want me. He's not going to love me, right? Like, oh, Jesus, that old programming. Like, really? Really? Really, God? I thought I've worked through this.
I love that you brought that up. It's so true. I look at it, I mean, I'm sure many people have had this, but it came on to me and I was like, it was like an epiphany where I went, oh, healing is not linear. I don't get to just work on this thing and think it's gone. It comes back around and we go deeper every single time it rears its head. Every single time I catch myself, engaging with this toxic behavior, this pattern, I'm like, it gives me an opportunity to clear it on an even deeper level. And I think that's one of the misconceptions is people think, well, if I just talk about this, it'll go away. And it's like, nope, you're going to be facing this on different levels in different areas of your life, kind of, I think, until we get to that core wound. And you nailed it. Vulnerability is a really big one. Feeling vulnerable and being, having that fear, right, that attaches to our self-worth. And so we engage in protective behaviors and we armor up, you know.
Right.
And I'm so curious. I mean, I'm so curious. Please just tell me how you did this. I mean, your sassiness that you've held on to and your ability to just, recalibrate and recreate your life and hang on to how to create abundance and prosperity for yourself, even when you were facing, your parents' behaviors and your past relationships. How did you maintain your self-worth and value, and how did you pull yourself up out of those patterns to create the life that you have now for you and your children and your grandchildren? I mean,
Yeah, a lot of therapy. I'm not going to lie, right?
mhm,
I've always had many coaches, right? So I've got 3 financial coaches. I've got a business coach. I've got a personal development coach. That's my AKA therapist,
mhm,
right? And when I first started, I didn't have money, right? So I found books, right? I learned from mentors in the books, and I did the work,
mm,
because I realized that I needed to break the pattern that I was inside of. And
mhm.
I knew I couldn't do it myself. A really good coach will tell you what you don't want to hear. They'll show you what you don't want to see so that you could be the person you knew you could be. That's a coach, that's a therapist, whatever you want to call it. I'm calling it a coach, right? A therapist to walk you through. And they give you exercises to do the work, not just talk to you about it. And a lot of crying, right? A lot of crying, a lot of healing, a lot of seeing my patterns. We live in patterns. And, like you said, we put that armor up, that's a pattern. I learned to be invisible. The hardest thing about being a speaker is you
Mm.
can't be invisible. As a business owner, you can't be invisible. You have to be out there. You've got to get seen to be heard to get paid. And so I've had to do a lot of work. And the only way you're going to do it, Ryan, is you just got to do it. Like,
Mhm.
I just had to get on stage. I just had to fail or fall and pick myself up again. But you got to have a big why. My first why was my children, of not wanting them to break the pattern of what my parents were doing. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I knew I did not want my children to see me be beat. I didn't want to be beaten. That didn't feel like love. Even
Mm.
though my programming was that's love, it
Yep.
didn't feel like love. Like, internally, your internal guidance system says something is wrong. You need to listen to what that is. They were interviewing Oprah one time, and they said, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? And she said, I would listen to the whisper, not wait for it to be a tsunami. And when
Mm.
you come from abuse, when you come from neglect, when you come from exploitation, it doesn't ring wrong until it's a tsunami. Until
Yep.
there's like I don't even know what stage hurricane, but like a big old, then you're like, oh, this isn't right. Boundaries? What are boundaries? I still have a problem with boundaries. I don't have boundaries. If I see you, I'm gonna hug you. It's to some people that's inappropriate, but I'm a lover,
Mm.
right? So I have to go, oh, well, there's boundaries. Let me respect people's boundaries. What are my boundaries? What would they be if I had boundaries?
I love that. What would they be if I had boundaries? I think that's one that comes up for every single person on the planet is what do boundaries look like? What do they feel like?
So that resiliency you hear is journal work. It's doing the work when you don't want to do the work, right? It's being responsible for your behavior, right? I learned love, like what I thought love was, like, grown up love from soap operas.
Yep.
From Dallas, right? The TV show Dallas. Like I was so drama girl. It was well, of course you're drama if you're reading Harlequin romances and you're, it's like everything is gone with the wind and
Disney gave me a horrible outlook on what love was supposed to be.
right. But that's where we learn and go, oh, this is not love. I remember my husband, he said to me, he goes, Susie, anybody, I'm like, I want love like in the movies. He goes, baby, I can do that. Anyone can do it for 90 minutes. You just want it around the clock. He's like, I will be your 90-minute man. I'm like, but it's true. You start looking at it and you're like, oh, okay, 90 minutes. Because that's all you have to watch this whole life scenario.
Right.
That's not realistic. You can't be that person 7/24, right? You're going to have good days and bad days. But when you come from neglect and abuse and exploitation, you're just trying to be perfect all the time.
Yeah.
And your perfectionism will sabotage you. And so it's seeing that you've got to see your own patterns and you have to take responsibility. Like, I know you were in whatever situation you're in is not your fault, but now you're an adult. Like, I'm an adult now. I will never be that 5-year-old girl anymore, that 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, right? Who couldn't stand up for herself, that didn't have a voice, that people touched me inappropriately, that couldn't tell anyone, right, without being beaten. You go, I'm not. I'm 55 years old now. I will whoop your ass if you touch me wrong. Right? And anybody else is, right? I will stand beside you, in front of you, behind you. And you've got to find advocates like that, right? To be able to help you when you're down, not coddle you, not make you weaker.
Right.
There's a fine line between support and enablement.
Well, and that's really why I started this podcast. Is I was looking around at all of the, when I first started coming to terms with my own story, I poked my head up out of the sand because I had become invisible. And that's still a pattern that I'm working with currently too, that hasn't gone away just because I'm willing to speak out. But what I found was I came to face with a lot of organizations that were willing to call me a victim, and that were like, and I won't lie, I was definitely swayed when I hit a PTSD peak while I was working on some projects. It was easy to think of myself as a victim because it was easier to explain things away that way rather than, face the choices that I had made. And I think that's one of the biggest things about, if you want change, if you want to move forward, you have to own your choices, even if those choices were made under duress, even if those choices were made forcibly, you're between a rock and a hard spot. I think that when you own those choices, it makes it so much easier to come up with a plan and an action to change your circumstances and to own your story and to find the goodness in it, and I really want to bring that up. How did you find your discipline around money, given like where the background that you came from with your family and your husband and, everything? How did you find the discipline to stay the course that you're on?
Well, you have to have the why. What's your big why? Right? And things in the beginning are the why, right? For my why was my children, right? And then from my children, because when I was making $250,000 a year, I got bored because it was never about making money.
Okay.
Right? Once you're done in the survival, like if you go back to school or look up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So Maslow was a psychologist. I think it was in the 40s. And so we all have this hierarchy of needs. And in the beginning, we are all just looking for our psychological needs to be met, right? Food, shelter, clothing, and reproduction. So when I first left, I was just in food, shelter, clothing. I got to figure out how to feed my babies. I got to figure out, how to do this. The next level is your safety needs, right? So that's your personal security, your employment, your health, your property, your home. You're not worried about day-to-day functioning anymore.
Right.
So then you can breathe a little bit, Now, once you can breathe a little bit, then you start looking for love and belonging, right? And you're looking for friendship and intimacy and sense of connection and sense of community. So this is how every single human being processes. The next level is your esteem. You're looking for respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, freedom, strength, right? You've built these muscles. Now you can go to up and down on this chart for years, right? Sometimes I'll go back to survival because that's innate in me. I feel like my survival is threatened. When we all hit this COVID thing, survival came back in for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And now survival's a new norm, right? We go outside, we wear masks, we go outside, we wash our hands more than we've ever washed our hands. Social interaction is limited. And because now we have a new norm of our psychological needs. And so
Right.
now we start going back up the scale to safety. Like, oh, okay, wash your hands, wipe down everything. There's a new reality. So even back in the day when, I was making as a hairdresser, I started out with, nothing and built my way up. I got bored once I hit that belonging. I'm like, because it wasn't about money. I'm like, now I want to make a difference. I want to show people how to do this. Now, I didn't know how to do that. I just knew I wanted to make a difference. That became my new why. I want to show other people so they don't have to starve, right? The average income back in the day was for that industry was $30,000 a year. Well, even back then, right? And I'm looking at 1993, 92, right in that era, right? That wasn't a lot of money. And so I started looking at how do I make a difference, which is that highest level is your self-actualization. Now I had to go back down to survival because I had to figure out, well, how do I pay my bills now if I'm not going to be this hairdresser? So I kept that job until 2000,
Okay.
right? Morphed it as I was building another business. So I always had that safety net because I'm always worried about my survival. One of my biggest money patterns is security. I never want to feel like I can't take care of myself or I'm indebted to somebody else. As an abuse survivor, we're very independent,
Yeah.
right? So we're like, I got to take care of me. No one else is going to take care of me. They're going to use me, right? They're going to hurt me. They're going to, so like you said, we have that armor on like, okay, no one can penetrate this.
Right.
Right. So I've always had this other side hustle while, so I had this security while I was building, my other businesses. Right. And in the beginning, I didn't save money. I spent a lot of money. I made $250,000, but I spent, 252,000. Right. So
Right.
it's like, that's not wealth. That's just money coming in, money coming out. I was still broke.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I had to pivot to go, oh, but I had to get to that level. I had to feel that, whatever that level is for you. I had to feel like how to love myself and how to take care of myself and take care of my children. And then you realize things aren't the answer. Right? The house, the car, the things, right? They're just things. They don't fulfill you. What fulfills me is that love and belonging, right? That making a difference in the world, right? Me feeling good about what I'm doing, that my contribution back to God, right? Is what did I do with all the gifts that God gave me? And so this has been, I'm 55. So, if you think I left home at 17, right? That it's been a journey to figure this out and still leveraging, learning, right? You never stop learning, right? If you're just in front of the TV, if you're just trying to soothe your pain with alcohol or drugs or other things, you're never going to get out of the vicious cycle. You'll keep going back to your patterns of finding people who on the outside might look perfect and pretty, but on the inside are still abusing you. It may be a little sexier, it may be a little refined, right? But when you come from abuse, you have to work on the foundation of abuse or you just keep attracting that, right? You've got to be able to, you have to do the work that you have to do and nobody can do it for you. I can guide you, right? Rand can guide you. I can tell you, do these things, read these books, right? If you can't afford to hire someone, there's a ton of free resources out there. Like be an advocate for yourself.
Yes.
Right? Be your own rescue. I used to want men to rescue me. Right? I'm like, that must be the answer. They want me for one thing I'll be good at, and then you'll rescue me. No, that does not happen. I look at all my relationships. I was the rescuer. I was the breadwinner. I was the person, doing most of it. Like, wait, what do I need that for? I don't need a man. I love a man. I love having that relationship, but I'm doing it anyways. So but that's just me owning it to go, oh, there is no rescue. I've got to rescue myself and be my own rescue.
I love that you said that. You have to be your own hero. And that's not something that we are taught as children. And, and I think too, when we learn to fall back on our manipulations, it can create codependency. And that codependency actually builds resentment. And what's so funny about that resentment, at least in my experience, has been we can turn that resentment on others for not meeting our needs before we realize that no, it's actually because we're not meeting our own needs. And that's where the resentment stems from. It's, and that comes from those codependent relationships. And again, going backwards, the codependency, can come from us wanting to armor up and fall back on those old patterns of wanting someone else to save us, not realizing we have everything we need to save ourselves. And that self-agency and letting go of that learned helplessness that was instilled upon us, whether it be in our childhood or through various relationships that we're learning to overcome our own insecurities and or, in other cases, organizations or just well-meaning people that, again, like what you had said, haven't walked the walk, but that are working through theory.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it says in the Bible, the truth will set you free. And I did not really experience freedom until I started telling my truth, telling my story, saying, I got rid of the looking good, like so ashamed, like I have to tell somebody this, right? And I remember being in this class and there was probably 300 people and they, have you get on stage and talk about, whatever's up for you. And I was trying to look good. Right? I'm trying to tell the story and look good. And the instructor stopped me and said, "You're full of shit." I'm like, "Excuse me?" Because I had been so trained to be polished and perfect.
Yeah.
Not vulnerable, not real, not authentic. Like, no, that's not what people want. Right? I'm a master at this. Right? They're like, "You're full of shit. What's the real truth?" I'm like, "What do you mean? What's the real truth?" "No, what are you hiding?" I'm like, "What do you mean? What am I hiding?" Right? I was just like dodging every bullet possible. Like, I'm not hiding anything. He's like, my bullshit meter's on and it's on you. I'm like, oh my God, I've never been called out like that. I had been to therapy. We talk about therapy, but that's safe in a safe environment. Right. And so this was a personal development workshop. So there was every right to have this conversation. I agreed to have these conversations. I just wasn't prepared for it. And I just started telling my truth, the ugly truth, the ugly, like, I think you're not going to like me anymore and you're going to judge me and think I'm a slut and all the stuff that I had done and manipulated. And I was so in my story and I'm looking down, sobbing because I'm so ashamed and so embarrassed and so like, oh my God, I'm going to be like the slut of the town when I walk out of this room. And the instructor said, "Susie, I need you to look up. Look up." I was embarrassed. Like, he came on stage and came beside me and said, "Look up." And I looked up and everybody is I'm going to cry, on their feet, standing up, giving me a standing ovation. And I just told all my darkest secrets that I'm embarrassed and ashamed about. And they were crying and I'm crying. I'm like, you guys are weirdos. You guys are freaks.
Oh.
And it was so freeing because they're like, finally, we get to see who you really are. And I learned through that course that they loved me more when I was just being authentic, that I didn't have to be perfect, right? I didn't have to have my hair done and my lips on and have this perfect pedigree delusion, because it was a delusion. I had none of that, right? I was making it up and trying to have my success mask the pain and the hurt and the dysfunction of what was my life. What people were craving was the authenticity of, despite all that, I'm still rising. Despite all that, I choose to get up. Despite all that, I choose to keep being a voice for women and men. Despite all that, I keep putting myself out there. And that day changed my life to like, I don't have to hide anymore. You have to find the right community. I call it conscious listening, right? So enlightened listening and conscious listening, right? I have an enlightened listening for you. I'm not judging you and your story. And who am I the right to judge? I've done some stupid stuff, right? Stuff I'm not proud of. And I still succeed. And I own my stuff. I apologize for my stuff. I'm not perfect, right? I'm a human being. So there's always going to be something. You can clean up your integrity all day long. And it's like doing the dishes all day long. You can clean your house and this kitchen is spotless. And you know what? In another 20 minutes, there'll be a glass in the sink and then it's dirty again. That's integrity, because you might say something, do something. I may have offended somebody on this call, making it seem like it's too easy, or, someone's going to get their feathers ruffled. That's okay. My job isn't for you to like me. My job is to cause disruption. My job is to have you think. My job is for you to think I'm a weirdo so that you can start looking just like I thought they were weirdos. To go, is it true? Can I really tell my truth? Can I really tell you my darkest secrets? And you'll still be there. Because as a victim of abuse, people aren't there. They're not your ride or dies. They're not going to stand beside you. They're going to make fun of you. They're going to put you down. They're going to manipulate in their own way so they feel better. So finding the right community that sees you, that hears you, and supports you to get out of it, not staying as a victim, right? Yes, we've all experienced things that people will label as that, but I'm not a victim now. I was when I was a child, but not anymore. I'm responsible and accountable for everything that I do, even when my patterns sneak back in and sabotage me. And I say stupid things or do stupid things or hurt people, not on purpose, but I still have to be accountable and responsible.
Oh, Susie, you are my spirit animal. There are just like tears streaming down my face. I got goosebumps all over. I'm just like, oh, I just hope I can be as cool as you.
You are as cool as me.
Oh, God, you're amazing. I'm just overwhelmed by your awesomeness. Honestly, I really am. I just have one more question for you. And I'm asking this because you are a leader and you guide people and you're a mentor and you're all the amazing things. And how do you deal with other people's disappointments in you? I mean, I know we can talk all day about how logically it's not our issue, it's their issue. But how do you cope with when you call somebody out on their actions and in order to help them, and then they return with resentment and anger? How do you personally walk yourself through being your best version with your integrity and your good intentions and meet their whatever it is that they've got going on?
That's a juicy question. And there's a two-part answer.
Awesome.
So one, my family is a great representation of that question, because my family still doesn't get me. And I remember trying so hard to get approval from my dad, to get love from my dad, to get acceptance from my family. And the reality is they don't have the capacity. So I kept going back to get something validated inside of me that they weren't even capable of giving. And no fault to them. They just haven't done the work. I've done the work. I've done the work and realized like, oh, I need to express this to my dad, or, oh, I need to, create these relationships with my sisters, or, oh, and then I realized that your friends become the family that you choose. So instead of trying to make my sisters be something that they weren't, or my dad be something he wasn't, I started finding men mentors that were truly mentors. It's really hard if you've been sexually abused to find men mentors, because they always want to have sex with you. Yeah. Right. So it's like, oh, I need to learn that boundary and say exactly what I want up front. Like, listen, here's what I'm looking for. Like, I don't want to be in a relationship with you. I don't want to have sex with you. Like, you just have to learn to tell your truth. Right? Because when you're good at it,
yeah, right.
When you're good at it, you just get that energy out there, and you're like, okay, I got to reel that back in. My girlfriend said,
oh,
my girlfriend said to me, right? Look at some good ones.
Biting my tongue.
My girlfriend said, "Oh, I'm not ready for single Susie."
Oh.
Man, the minute you flip that switch on, it's like you've opened the floodgates, right?
I used to walk around and I honestly, like, I didn't even know that I was doing it. And I would have people, men and women, who like, oh, I had women just walk up to me and grab me and kiss me. And this is like, I'm going, what the heck is going, like, do I have a sign on my forehead? But your energy introduces you. And, so I feel you, man. Oh, we got to have some conversations sometime.
So one is find the people who can become the relationships that you're missing
Mm,
instead of trying to make your family be something that they are not. And my sisters are amazing. And my dad, amazing. When my dad passed away on his deathbed, girl, it's funny now, right? It's been many,
yeah.
many, many, many years. He said, I don't understand. I just sold my company for millions,
Mhm.
right? Millions. I was the black sheep in the family. I was the troublemaker. I was the one always questioning, right? So my dad's on his deathbed and he's like, Sue, I just don't understand. I'm like, what? Why did they pay you all that money? I'm like, oh my God. He didn't like he's
You
on
really
your deathbed. You still don't get it. He could only see me for who I was, not who I'd become.
Mm,
Right. And then probably energetically, I would come as the little girl,
right?
wanting his love, wanting his approval, wanting what he could never give me. It just was not in his skill set. He
Right. Reverting
raised,
back into those roles.
right. So
Yeah.
he raised 9 kids. He provided for them food, shelter, clothing. That was his job. That's what he's did. I can celebrate that. Right. He gave me an amazing work ethic, right? To go, let me find the things he did do versus look at the things he didn't do.
Right. I
And I
love
think
that
we
you
do
said that you
that.
can celebrate that.
Yeah, I think we look for like, oh, they didn't give me this, they didn't give me that. Yeah, but what did they do well?
Right.
What did you do well? Listen, you lay your
Mm,
head down on your bed at the end of the night and you go through what you didn't get done, what you didn't say, what you didn't, you beat yourself up, you didn't exercise, you ate the brownie, you ate whatever, you drank, you did whatever you did. We beat
mhm.
ourselves up. What if for a moment we stop and say, I had an amazing conversation with Rand today that will change people's lives,
Yes.
right? I had an amazing conversation with Sunny today, right? With my team today. Like I
Mm,
truly made a difference today. I'm blessed and I'm thankful. What would your life be like? That's part of my routine. Every morning I wake up and I do a meditation. It's all about wealth and wealth management,
mhm.
right? So, because that's my purpose, that's my divine, that gets me clear. And every night I pray and say what I'm thankful for. Now, if you don't believe in God, that's okay. You pray to whatever higher power you have. You've got to believe in something bigger than yourself.
Mhm.
Say, what am I thankful for? And it could be something so simple that you got out of bed, that you noticed your negative self-talk and you put it on pause and you said, thank you for sharing. And that's none of my business. That's not who I am anymore.
Mm.
Like there's so much, like when I'm really talking, because I don't really talk about this, right? I talk about it in class sometimes, but most of my stuff is business and business related. And, there's so much that's made me, but it's work, right? It's important to me to reshape my identity, my past, and my future for myself, for my children and my grandchildren. What I love, Rhiannon, you're doing it for yourself, and your family, is we broke the pattern. Right, we broke the pattern.
I call us cycle breakers.
Mhm.
Yep.
And that is a gift. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're breaking the pattern. Just listening to this podcast is a step in the right direction, even if it made you uncomfortable. Even if you're like, how could they just talk about this and laugh about it? Well,
Mm.
if we're not laughing, we're crying. And I've cried over it for years.
Yes.
And I want to see the humor and the beauty and the lessons. I don't condone the behavior. The behavior is not right. I'm an advocate for the behavior to stop. Anything that you want me to play with you, and I will play with you, because this is near and dear to my heart. I am the woman I am because I've done work around it. I didn't stay. I didn't stay in that relationship. I didn't stay in my manipulative behavior, right? My life would be completely different if I just used sex to manipulate the rest of my life.
Yeah. You are just, I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude just for your awesomeness, your sharing, your vulnerability that you just opened yourself up to us here today. I'm out of words.
That's
Out of words.
good. Never. It usually doesn't happen to the interviewee.
I'm just like sitting here. I'm like, I just feel like an avid listener. I'm like, you're just packing this all along. And I'm like, yeah, no, just don't stop talking, man. Cause I got nothing. Just keep going.
But you don't have nothing, right? You're the conversation starter. You're the
Ah,
cycle breaker, right? And so I just want to acknowledge you for the lives that you're changing that you don't know you're changing. One of the
Oh.
challenges with podcasts is you don't know, right? It's like I put it out in the universe and I hope it falls in the lap of people that need it.
I think that's the best that we can hope for, to be honest with you. And, it's so funny with everything that's coming at us with COVID. I know, you and I kind of spoke a little bit about this before we hit record. With everything that's happening at COVID, even, I've lost a few opportunities that were presented before all this, and the one thing that's held steady and has been the podcast, in the sense of knowing that in some way, somehow, I don't have any idea how it's going to land, but I know it's going to land because people like yourself keep meeting me, and
Mhm.
you're meeting me in the middle, and I think that there's just a community is gathering to help encourage the people that are taking the time to listen. And so I think, how can the podcast not land? And for everybody that shows up to listen, like, I'm just so proud of them. You guys that are listening, I'm so proud, and I'm so encouraged and amazed and awed at your ability to just get back up and try again. And I think that's one of the really important things, is knowing that just because you have to take a time out doesn't mean that you are quitting. That knowing that you're going to start again, just maybe when you're not so tired, and that's
Right.
okay. You know.
And realize it's baby steps, right? It's
Yeah,
baby steps, but one step goes to the next step. So
that's
don't
right.
quit. You're going to have hard days. You're going to have good days. It is our life pattern. It is who we are. It's what makes us us. So
Hmm.
don't shove it. Don't deny it. Let's confront it. Let's look at it. Let's love it. Let's hold it, because you're grown now, right? You get to make different choices. And
That's
those
right.
choices can be scary. It was scary to leave my husband. It was scary to be a single mom, but the reality was it was scarier to stay. It was scarier to see what my life and my children's life would be. Right now we laugh, right? And I'm
Mhm.
I'm really I've healed so much that I'm friends with their dad. We have a loving relationship, and
Oh,
I can joke with him now,
yep.
which is crazy that we can even talk about it, right? I know we're wrapping, so I'll share the story for
No,
you.
no, share the story. I got all the time in the world for you.
So I remember one time he was going to kill me.
Mm.
And so it was when we first broke up. He didn't want anyone to have a relationship with me. And, my daughter's having a really hard time in her marriage, and they're both under incredible stress. And I said, I need you to support her and be a strong role model for her and what's right and wrong in the marriage. And he goes, Girl, I'm not worried about him. He's not going to do anything. I'm like, Listen, we don't know what stress will do for people. Remember that time you were going to kill me and you did not stop until your partner stood in front of you and said, I wasn't worth it. It's not worth going to jail. And he's like, Yeah, you're right, girl. I remember that day. That wasn't a good day. No, that was not. You would be in jail or I would be dead or both,
Mm.
or so I need you to be the role model your daughter needs to see. And there was no emotion there for me. There was no make wrong in that conversation. It was like, hold up, under stress, you can threaten to kill, and then there's the action to kill. And he was in the action to kill. He had threatened me for years, and you get immune to it. You're like, what, whatever, I'll kill you back, right? It
Yeah.
just seems like it's words. And when you grow up in an abusive environment and you're in those relationships, it's just normal. And so, I don't want her to experience that that's normal behavior. Like that's not normal behavior. And so, it still comes back in my life to go, wait, how do I help my children? How do I help them now in relationship? And how do we not sweep this under the carpet? And how does he own that decision? Right. The
Mhm.
fact that he could laugh at it and say, You're right, girl, that was a bad day. Yeah, it was a bad day. Go take care of your family now. Go take care of your daughter now. Go be a stand for her when you couldn't be a stand for me. He's like, all right, girl, I'll go do that. It's like you pivot and you own your power and you snatch your power back, miracles can happen. Good. I had to snatch my power back and miracles can happen in your life. I'm a firm believer of a miracle, but you have to expect miracles. You have to have the faith that he would turn around. I'm attached to that man till the day we both die because I
Mhm.
chose to have children with him. I had to learn to confront all the abuse, but also learn to forgive and
Yeah.
learn how do I work through it? Because he's still my grandchildren's grandpa, right?
Mhm.
We still do family functions together. I don't want to be full of hate and anger. That's not me. That doesn't feel good. I like love. I like feeling good. I like friends. I'm not in denial. Look, I'm not ever alone with him. I don't, I protect my children from him, protect my grandchildren from him.
You have those boundaries in place.
Right. Those boundaries. There they are again, y'all. Those boundaries. So I think it's important that you realize that your journey is uniquely you, and we need to hear it. I need to hear it. Rianne needs to hear it. Somebody else needs to hear it because you give people strength, right? I cannot tell you how many women and men have come out of the woodwork because I'm willing to talk about the things I'm talking about.
Hmm.
Because I'm willing, and they're like, "Can I share my story?" Absolutely, share your story. If it's going to heal you, absolutely. And then how do we use that story to springboard to
Yeah.
your next greatness, your next journey, right? Like you said, Rand, you came to this kicking and screaming, and not our call, kicking and screaming on the mission God has placed before you to say, go share your story. You're like, no, that's not pretty. No, that's not polite conversation.
That is not a conversation I want to have with you, myself, or anybody else at this table. Yeah.
Once you start talking about it, you start realizing that the monsters can't get you anymore.
What
Right.
I think too, it really has to do about admitting to yourself your own mistakes. And I think that for me personally, once I began to forgive myself and to praise myself and celebrate myself, that was when I was really able to take a step forward and start to begin to share it with other people too. And that has to do with vulnerability and wanting to armor up and, and be protective. Um, but yeah, I would encourage everybody that you have to learn to celebrate yourself. And even you need to find the gifts at some point in your own journey that have brought you to where you are. It's like your story with your husband. You faced some difficult trials, and you didn't just rise above. I mean, you embraced what you went through, and you owned your own actions, and you found a way to not just self forgive, but also to construct boundaries that allowed you to share that forgiveness and therefore expand in love and share that and demonstrate it for your family. And that, to me, that's what cycle breaking is. It's not just about overcoming your own trials, it's about setting those boundaries and demonstrating those behaviors to your family so that they can then embrace that and rise above as well. And so that they know what this looks like. What does healthy love look like? So you just continue to amaze me, Susie, and I know that we're wrapping up on time because we only had you for a very limited time, and I'm just stuttering at this point because I'm like, you're just so cool. I just like want to be your friend.
You are my friend. I'm so happy to have you in my community and my tribe. And, we've known each other for years on social media.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
thank you for reaching out. Thank you for being willing to have me. Thank you
Oh,
for being willing to listening to your calling, right? So that we can, change people's lives forever. And thank you for being obedient. I think that
oh,
is hard when you're a survivor, is to be obedient to the scary,
mm,
right? Because we've lived in so much fear, and like we avoid it with a 10-foot pole. But when you can find your calling and find your greatness, run towards it, not away
run
from
towards it. It's a terrifying adventure, hair on fire.
it. But
Where
so worth it, right?
it is so worth it. I tell you what, I got to share this right quick before we go. I just went through one heck of an experience. I was up doing some of my bioenergetic work up with the indigenous community in Lillooet again, and I'm up there, and I came face to face with one of my biggest fears, and I rejection. It just I've crumbled in the face of rejection. Like even just a simple no can just put me, into just a blubbering underneath the skin, of course. Um, and I came face to face with having to hear, but not hear somebody reject me, not because of who I was, but because of their own limitations. And so I came home and I had to sit in that discomfort. And I'm telling you, it was facing that fear, sitting in that discomfort, understanding that even though you love everybody around you, that not everyone's going to love you. I think I can't remember where I was going with the story. I had some point to make with it. Now I've gotten off track again. But sitting in that discomfort, running towards that fear, it's terrifying. But when you sit with it, when you embrace it, when you allow those emotions to roll through you, I mean, emotions are just energy in motion. When you allow it to go through you, I think that there's something so magnificent on the other end of that. And even when you're on fire, you can turn towards your mentors, especially on social media now and today. I'm just going to do a quick pivot here. Like yourself, Susie, where can people find you? Because that's what I do when I'm facing these problems, when I'm facing these fears, when I'm sitting in my discomfort. I look to people like yourself who are, just shining a bright light. Where can we find bright lights like yourself? Where are you sitting at?
I love that. Thank you. So on social media, it's my name, Susie Carder, C-A-R-D as in dinero, E-R. Dinero, dollar. Same with my website. It's my name, Susie Carder, SUSIE CARDER. There's a bunch of free resources on there, videos, there's assessments, just a way to see if what I'm up to is what you need, right? I have a business bent, so I'm business strategy. I work on that, 85% to help you grow your business. There is mindset stuff, but that's really isn't the best use of my time. And we have other people that we can support you with to go through that. But I will always be your sister in the journey, right? I stand with you, beside you, behind you, in front of you, whatever that you need, so that you can find your voice, find your purpose, and make a difference.
Oh, thank you so much again, Susie. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're up to and look forward to playing again.
Yes, I hope that you will come back and join us again as soon as possible.
Absolutely, girl. I'm your girl. Have a blessed day. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I have my own colony, my best foot in front of me. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. 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 I am my own colony, my best foot in front of me. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I'm not where I'm supposed to be.
Disclaimer. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not necessarily reflect the opinions or viewpoints of the host, producer, other guests, or sponsors. I, Rayanne K. Irving, am not, nor have I ever been, a doctor or therapist, and none of what I say is intended for professional or medical advice.